the core of this business that we'd taken on was the horses, and that was central to everything we did.
We're really lucky that we can help them with their communication skills, understanding stuff.
What do your customers learn, would you say, from the Horse Connection experiences?
We launched Horse Connection last year. We have an overarching brand, which is My Connection.
How does it feel now, having seen that transformation, having created your retreat and your haven for these animals?
Energy of the place is amazing.
Big change, I guess, was that home became work.
How often do you rush to get into the saddle without thinking of the connection with the horse beneath you? Well, Tam and Ants Bennett swapped their corporate careers in London for a North Devon riding stables and several holiday lets. When they embarked on their new journey, they realised that the fast-paced atmosphere of a riding school wasn't what they wanted to offer to explorers of the Devon countryside. They wanted to help people build a deeper understanding of horses to benefit both humans and equines. And so began Collicott Farm, a rural retreat with the opportunity for horse connection. So how did they transform their riding school into a holistic connection space? And what did it take to make their equestrian dream a reality? Let's find out, shall we?
Tam and Ants, welcome to Curious Equestrian.
Thank you.
Hi there, thanks for having us.
Now take us through and describe what your Horse Connection experiences truly are.
Well, it's probably worth starting at the beginning, I guess, which is that Tam and I were looking to move to North Devon. We'd travelled much of Cornwall and Devon and decided that this was the location for us. And we thought to ourselves, we'd quite like to take on, a couple of letting cottages, maybe a couple of horses. And what we've ended up with is a 20-year-old British Horse Society riding stables and 8 letting cottages. So it's a bit bigger than we'd anticipated or planned. But I guess it's fair to say the place probably chose us. So painful couple of first years as we learnt all about it, and some lots of firsts for us. However, last year we were delighted to relaunch the business as Horse Connection, and I guess what we observed in the first few years were that a bit like my childhood with horses, my perception of riding stables, children and adults would sort of turn up and expect to get straight on a horse. And so our ambition really has been to connect humans with horses. So that's what Horse Connection is all about.
And take us through those challenging years when you had just moved in, you'd taken on a riding school, which is no mean feat. What was that experience like as you began to shape shift and actually transition and change into the more horse-connected world?
Well, I think it's a really interesting question. I hadn't really had much experience of equestrian or riding stables or equestrian people. The only experience I'd had was sort of Anthony's family, because Anthony's coming from that direction, and they're all absolutely lovely, love their horses and look after them really well. And arriving there, I personally found that the way that the animals were being cared for or being worked wasn't really the way I wanted it to be. So that was really difficult for me. And Anthony set about training. He implemented a lot of training, and we had a lot of experts come in to sort of help us along the way. And one of the ones we've been working with is a trainer from Mary Wanless called Ride With Your Mind. And it's really about getting people's biomechanics right before they actually sit on a horse. So we're helping the riders ride correctly. And that's been a great experience to change it around. But it was actually quite sad when we got there. The horses weren't in great shape. And we're doing a lot more horse welfare stuff or enrichment. And we look at a lot of places like the track livery places where they've got water buffets and stuff like that for horses. And we've gone barefoot with all of our horses now. One was there was one that was very difficult to transition, but I think he's nearly there. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
I was just going to ask Tam about that sadness that you felt. What was it that pulled at your heartstrings and thought, this isn't quite right, this isn't how we should be treating our horses?
There was quite a few stories that came out of the stables with the people that were working there when a horse was perceived to be naughty, that the woman who was in charge of the stables was chasing the horse with a quad, which for me is an absolute hideous idea or concept of sort of trying to make a horse behave by frightening it. So the horses were quite fearful, quite shut down. And I think because we pressed stop on the stables, we've had a long chance to actually let the horses relax, let the illnesses come out, treat the illnesses, and support their structure and their well-being to bring them back into work. And I think they feel the whole place feels so much better.
Yeah, it's been fascinating working with each individual horse and pony, because they I guess the key change was we closed the doors, to the sort of customers coming in, and it just gave us all space, and the horses space, just to almost just feel like they had choice. And choice is a really key part to how we run the operation now for the horses. And what we saw was just these characters coming out, and of course my view is that horses do need a purpose. They need to feel like they're involved and they're doing something, but at the same time, the majority of their life needs to be more natural. It needs to be horse. That's really what we continue to do each day, just try and work on how do we make it better. And of course, for many equestrians, that's all we try and do, isn't it? We just try and make their lives a little bit better each day, since we're the ones that ask them to live in the way they live. So that's really what we've been trying to do.
And Ants, how did you transition the horses from being these very troubled, shut down beings into happy, healthy horses, both mentally and physically?
I guess there were kind of two areas really. One was the environment. So how do we improve the environment for them? And those of you out there that know North Devon, our experience has been that it's quite wet. So, and I think rain has been a challenge for all equines, equestrians for the last few years. I think we're in a 3-year cycle, someone told me. So maybe just this year, and then we get the sun back. But anyway, we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
So yeah. Yeah, exactly. The first point was how to improve their environment, because we very quickly realized that the core of this business that we'd taken on was the horses, and that was central to everything we did. And so the environment, what we set out to do was, as and when we had the money to do it, we've added in surfaced areas to be able to get them off the wet, basically.
Yeah.
And so, the reality is, you realize fairly early on in taking on a herd of horses that you're basically a grass farmer, and you would have heard that term around the industry. But that's the reality. I had to become an expert on growing grass, really, and of course the key component is is trying to get the horses off wet land, really. And so the environment was one part, and freedom, forage, and friendship. I very much used that and embraced that as a philosophy with our horses. And then the second part was really the individual horses. So it was about working with each of them and just rebuilding the trust. It was working with them and just understanding them as individuals. As ever in working with horses, you've got, the breed, the individual, and it's really important to just meet them where they're at, really. Part of running a business like we have is we do need our horses to work, but it's about taking the pressure off, let's say 2 or 3 that are doing all the work, which is kind of how it was operating. So that's really what we've done, and it takes time, but we're in a great space. I mean, it never stops, does it? You're constantly trying to improve things and run a business as well. But we're certainly getting closer now, so that's good news.
We've had some really interesting people come to help us. So we've had an osteopath for the horses, we had massage therapists. There was that wonderful handheld thing that you're
see, I want to say kimchi, but that sounds like an Asian dish or something.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
The horses were just following anybody around the field that had it.
Yeah.
It
It was working with the fascia within the horses, and quite interesting. But it's interesting when you place the horse at the center of everything you're creating. That becomes quite interesting because most, even though our business relies on humans coming to us, our priority is the horse. So that attracts the right people, let's say.
Yeah. And I guess it was quite a unique experience moving into your riding school and actually taking on the horses that already existed on that land, that was already part of the riding school. Were they horses that you inherited as part of the business? And what was that like for you, getting to know horses that hadn't been brought in by yourselves?
Yeah, very much so. So we took on everything that was there. There were 16 horses originally when we took the business on. There was some livery as well, but essentially a herd of 13, I think,
Wow.
that were our own. One of the ponies we donated to a young lad who it's proved to be the only young lad that could ride this pony and had a really close relationship, and I think the pony helped him through some fairly challenging times. So we decided to donate that pony. So that was one pony. Another one was she was the mare of the herd, but she had a very strong connection with another girl that was coming to the riding stable before our time, So we sold her to that individual, and so ultimately that whittled it down to maybe 10 in the herd, and it's been, yourself and all the people out there, those that have horses. Every horse has beautiful qualities, and they're very individual, and that's what you end up getting to know. You can see the hierarchy in the herd. You can see the sort of which obviously moves and changes, but the pair bonding, I think, is probably the key one that we worked with, that just meant that with much more turnout time than they had when we first arrived. So there was summer and winter routines going on. And don't get me wrong, I would never judge anyone that's stabling horses, because of course we choose to keep horses. We have to look after them within a safe environment, and we clearly want to work with them as well. However, in our setup, it was just the objective was always to let's get them to a point where they could be out majority of their time, but near to where we need them to do some work as well.
Yeah, it must have been interesting bonding with the horses that were already felt at home on your land that you'd moved into. What was it like getting to know the different personalities? And did you feel like you wanted to add to your herd, to put your stamp on your herd of horses, or were you happy with those that you'd inherited through purchasing the yard?
We, I think we've been very fortunate in the herd we took on. They, as individuals, they each were offering and still are offering something lovely to the work we're doing now. And of course, as you can imagine, we have every size from sort of Shetland up to 16-handers. And uh, you know we could see just through observing the business for the first few years that each of the horses and ponies were offering a lot to those individuals that were coming in. And I guess the majority of the clients we're looking after and looking to bring into what we're doing are beginners or returners, is probably how we describe them. So our ambition is to work with children to give them a really solid foundation of riding, or just I mean, if a child comes to us looking to connect with horses, they will have a taster session of an hour, just to give them a feel for what we're all about, and for them and their parents to decide is it right for them, and then they'll sign up typically to a 6-week program. But one of the things we say quite clearly up front is that we're not like other riding stables. We're not your sort of typical riding stable. You won't always be riding. and it's really important we state that at the start, because as I say, there's some sort of families that want their children to progress very quickly with riding, and that's not really what we're about. We're more about that connection, really. And we know that horses can tell us so much about ourselves, and of course the blend of what we offer is about that connection. And what we're seeing is young people and adults that are really benefiting from improved self-confidence, anxieties going. For some people, it's the first time they've felt a really sort of non-judgmental connection, that's the power of what we're doing. And it's very much the horses, and every individual horse and pony is able to offer that to a human, as long as they're healthy, both physically and emotionally, then, and they know what's expected of them, then you can work with any horse, would be my view.
We're very lucky with the herd we inherited, because they are such fabulous characters. Really there's one, I think I can name some, but Ben, he's this big cob, and he's the one that like the ladies fall in love with. He's that kind of, and he's just gorgeous. And then there's River, who's kind of got my heart. He's a lovely Connemara, and he's really taken so well to the work that Anton is doing. My mum, who's got dementia, who's got real memory problems, they were in the arena, and he was at Liberty, and they were just practicing some stuff together, and it was an amazing experience for my mum. And to this day, 6 months later, she can still remember his name.
Wow.
But she has and it's because there's a real emotional connection. So the memory is made when the emotional connection is made. And she, she's got a photograph, up in the kitchen, so she can see that was her with River. It's brilliant. And these are amazing horses, and I'm sure all horses are amazing. But I think we're really lucky. I think we've got some really good ones.
It is such a magical connection, isn't it? Particularly when you get a case study like that, where there's such a unique bond and there's such an impact made, isn't there, on someone's life. And like you say, I love that you kind of honed in on the fact that they're all such unique personalities and characters, because going back, through my life with horses, for me, yes, we love the riding. Yes, it's great fun. Yes, you get a great sense of achievement and that feel good factor when you progress to the next level. But it's the characters that stay with you, and it's those bonds that you make, and it's those sort of feedback you get saying, wow, no one could get the best out of that horse like you, or wow, she really responded to your riding in ways she doesn't respond to others. Or, you know, I have such fond memories of learning to tack up the horse as such a young child, and then leading them to the field and learning to catch them, and building that bond on the ground, which I think is actually more unusual now when learning these horsemanship skills, isn't it? It's always usually the focus, as you say, is in the saddle, when it's the moments on the ground that are so precious and actually allows us to kind of stand back and go, wow, we're working with such incredible, sentient, sensitive beasts, essentially. They're huge animals, aren't they? And it just strikes me every time, even though I've got my own horses, every time we work on the ground, I'm sort of blown away by that bond and that communication that exists between horse and human.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the activities we do for people that are looking to work on a challenge in their life, or or even if they just come to us for the first time, we do a meet the herd activity, which you would have heard of, I guess, in different different environments. And what I always find so incredible about that experience is that each person gravitates to a horse in the herd or a pony in the herd, and when we talk about it afterwards, why did you gravitate to that particular horse? I'm able to tell them the character of the horse after that, and more often than not, there are characteristics in the horse that are a match to the person. And it always never stops surprising me,
It's amazing, isn't it?
how
Do you
kind
find,
of.
is it a direct match, Ants? Is it that people have got similarities with the horse? It's not opposites attract?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And what we tend to do is ask them to identify two, in the herd. And what you often find is that it's more often than not, it's kind of it's the fun side of that person, and then also the perhaps the areas of their life that are difficult, so
Yes,
they kind
yeah.
of end up with almost different parts of themselves that they see reflected in the horses,
It's
but
so
it's brilliant
interesting.
because yeah.
Well, it's so interesting that you mentioned that, because I think in life, whether it's human relationships or animals, we're often billed that we should be with opposite characters, shouldn't we? If we're a bit highly strung, we should be with someone quite calm. And actually, often that does work really well, like the yin and the yang. But with horses, I've always
Yeah.
been drawn towards those highly strung, feisty, loud, high energy. And I've always thought, I'm surprised that my energy doesn't spiral them out, but actually it's a kind of a kindred spirit situation. My mare that I've got, she's a rescue mare. She had a very troubled background in Ireland. I actually bought her unseen, even though all my friends said, don't do it, you'll get into all sorts of trouble, you don't know what you're buying. I kind of went against all of their judgment, and I said, no, I've got a feeling about her. I just need to get her. I just need to buy her. So over she came, and she'd been beaten, and she'd been tethered, and she had scars all over her, and she was lame, and she was in an absolute state, and it was heart-wrenching. But when we started to rehabilitate her and get to know her personality, it was amazing, because she had such a wonderful spirit, but she had that feist and that fire, and I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. And actually, there's so many similarities I see in her, not only the sort of slightly performer-esque, show-off, big character, but also the sort of sensitive and anxious moments as well. And it's kind of
Yeah.
made me face a lot of things about myself. And we did a big relocation from Kent to Suffolk, which at times can feel like very different territory. And she and I started mirroring behaviours when we landed in Suffolk. And I realised it was because what I was bringing to the field was a lot of angst and a lot of feeling lost. And I think she was picking that up off of me, and we were sort of sharing that experience. And I just think it's fascinating how our horses can sort of become a mirror to ourselves.
Yeah, one of the big things that we've found ourselves working on is people's energy.
Mm.
So when you start sort of doing connection work, you work with whatever comes through the door in some respects. In terms of where someone's at, that's where you meet them. A bit like with the horses, and the energy becomes the reoccurring theme. So now, before anybody goes near the horses, we focus on their energy. So we work with the great thing about working with people is if you talk about horses, they it takes the attention away from them as an individual, but in the same time, at the same time, they're able to relate to it, and they're able to take something from it. So what we do is we look at the window of tolerance of a horse, so that when the human goes near the horse, they're looking for signals and signs of how is that horse today. And of course, so a lot of what we talk about is doing sort of breathing exercises and grounding to make sure the human is, if you like, nicely positioned before they go and meet the horse, because as you well know, the horse is using their body the whole time to sense their environment and what's going on. And so if we turn up slightly anxious, then the horse will think, oh, hang on, have I got to be anxious? And they're using you to sense their environment. So energy becomes one of the most important factors in being with horses.
It's fascinating. And I love that your journey was escalated as for many it was during the pandemic. It made people reevaluate life and think, where do I want to be? And that's what prompted your move to your Devon retreat. But why horses? You could have put anything on the land, or you could have bought any kind of farm or yard and had goats or cows or pigs or whatever it might have been. Why did you both decide we want to create a retreat and it has to involve horses?
Well,
yeah.
he's got an amazing. He had an amazing experience as a young man, and I still believe that the spirit guide is still leading him. Tell them all about George.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, so fair enough. So, like a lot of your listeners, I mean, I look back now and I realize how lucky I was. But I grew up on a farm in Somerset with horses.
Oh, wow.
So, I've got 3 older sisters, and we all did the pony club thing, eventing, and tetathlon, triathlon, Prince Philip Games, all that kind of stuff. So a very kind of like blessed childhood, really, if I look back. Obviously troubled teenage years, but George was my Welsh mountain pony who got me through most difficulties in life. And he was one of these ponies that was like a rocket if someone who could ride got on his back. But if a baby was placed on his back, he'd be this beautiful, placid, gentle pony. So quite incredible. But my sister took him on originally, and he certainly wasn't that. When she took him on, he was bucking everyone off and all this kind of stuff. But but incredible pony, and so much so that our children rode him as well before he passed, and he's definitely still a part of me. I think as a lot of people find that they're kind of there's certainly quite a few horses that stay with you, aren't they? But we went and did the corporate thing. And I guess I played a bit of polo in London, but I'd left horses really. I'd go back and ride, when back with family and things. But and lockdown, did a lot of thinking and things, and I realized that I need to be working with horses again. They'd been such a key part of my life in my younger years, but I'd kind of done the usual, the sort of the career route and whatever. But realized that I need to be working with them again. So that is one of the key components to our move.
No, I definitely think George is sort of directing him in spirit, sort of just because actually when our children were riding them, I was leading one of them once, and he pushed me into a hedge. He was that kind of pony, because if you weren't kind of paying attention, he'd make sure you remember to pay attention next time. But yeah, it's great. We actually just found the land was super lovely.
Yeah,
it's really, really nice. We're quite far from the coast. I say quite far. We're 40 minutes, so way better than where we came from. but actually it means that you're in quite a quiet area, so like not a lot of traffic noise. So we're just surrounded by farmland, and the energy of the place is amazing. It's just so beautiful, dark sky because we're right next to Exmoor. So you've got these beautiful starry nights, and it we have a little bit of a problem that we share, that we like buying ruins. So so this fits the bill. So we thought we could, rebuild it, and we are rebuilding it. It's been a much slower process than we believed it would be from the outset, but it's starting to really shine. But the energy is great, and it's just getting better. Every day we do more clearing or more nurturing. It's just really coming back to life. It's really nice.
And Ants, when did you get all your qualifications with horses? Because you moved into equine facilitated learning, obviously after having a childhood and an upbringing with eventing and competing and riding around the farm.
Yeah. So I graduated last year with
Wow.
the I Feel method,
Yes.
and quite amazing. I mean, I researched quite a few different ones, and what you realize is that you well, ultimately it combines psychotherapy with horsemanship. So what was really important to me was that we had, if you like, a safe process to be able to support people, and I feel was exactly that. And it provides such a good platform. What you don't realize when you sign up to these courses, though, is that you have to sort all your own stuff out, or some of it anyway, which is a little bit of a smack around the face, but but yeah,
Is it very
but it's all good
confronting? You
stuff,
had to
isn't it?
deal with a lot of stuff that you didn't
Yeah,
want to resurface.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a lot of people will resonate with, in that with horses, they'll tell you straight away. You kind of, so in the same way that, they don't have any kind of facade like humans have, that's pretty much how the course played out. So yeah, but really amazing. And obviously when we've been fortunate enough to be able to take on the place in Devon, and what you realize is that for Tam and I, it was really important that we could obviously help support our lifestyle, but also how can we help others? How can we use our resources to help other people? And the best way we knew was in working with horses, and so the equine facilitated work is perfect for that.
What do you love about the link between studying psychotherapy and horsemanship? What did you sort of find out along that journey? Because that's fascinating, kind of digging down into that level of almost therapy and counselling alongside horsemanship.
Yeah, it's really amazing, I have to say. And what I realized was that quite often as humans we can feel like we're on our own with a particular difficulty in our life or challenge. But what I realized learning the psychotherapy is that actually, we're all dealt a slightly different life, but in the end, we're all the same. And if you look at the research from a science perspective and sort of psychological perspective, we're all actually going through the same stages in life, where challenges will come along in the way they do. And I suppose the psychotherapy for me was the perfect kind of reinforcement of what the horse can offer the human, and vice versa. And that was that the most important thing for all of us is to get in the present moment, because when you scan a horse's brain, they've actually scanned it and compared it to a human, and the brains are actually very similar.
Wow.
When you scan them. The big difference is that most of our brain is used for speech. And of course, horses don't speak, so their brains are more developed than ours in other areas. And so all of the work we do with the equine facilitated side is done in silence, because as soon as people would switch off speech, they're getting more into their bodies. And again, the science will tell us that we have neurons in our brain, in our heart, and in our gut. And when you're able to connect all three areas rather than just being in our heads, that's when people really feel their power, and feel, if you like, in flow or in the zone. That's kind of terms that are used sometimes. So for me, that was the most amazing thing. And of course, horses only live in the present, so we tend to live in the past, present, and future. And that can sometimes, unfortunately, get in the way of us, being at our best.
Isn't it interesting how we're all animals and yet we're so different, aren't we? And actually, humans have the arrogance of kind of disconnecting from the fact that we are inherently animals at the end of the day. And actually, we should be learning from the horses in front of us. And I think we seem to have forgotten that, in our journey with horses over the last sort of few hundred years.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, what we see of people that come to us is that, they're just, they arrive fairly sort of, let's say, stressed or preoccupied, but by the time they leave, they feel really themselves, and kind of, just much more relaxed and restored. And much of that is that connection. It's just it's feeling grounded, and the way in which I guess we work with people is very much to encourage them to become a little bit more horse. So so that kind of works well.
What do your customers learn, would you say, from the horse connection experiences?
The customers that we've had have related that they feel really seen and held by the horses in a very safe space, a non-judgmental space. Because I think whenever we are going out with, around going to school drop-off or whatever it is, we feel like other people are looking at us and going, oh, look what she's wearing or whatever. The horse doesn't have any of that. So I think there's a real groundedness in that kind of non-judgment space. And we've had some great examples. So one of our dearest customers, they come 2 or 3 times a year and bring their grandchildren. And one of the daughters, she's now 4, and she had heart surgery as an infant, and she has what's been diagnosed as a global developmental delay. And she went for the road for the first time this February. She's been around the horses a lot. So actually, the first thing that she wasn't speaking, and a week after they'd been staying with us, she was at her home and she just went, "River," and everybody turned around and went, "What?" And so she'd named one of the horses River, the one which I spoke about earlier. And then this time she was riding Pepper, and she got on the back of Pepper and she rode her like she knew how to ride, and this is a 4-year-old child. I mean, it's so dear. And she was beaming and she felt confident. And there was one of those moments where the mother and the grandmother actually had a really emotional moment, because that she had achieved something and she was confident and she was doing so. And this is what horses can offer us, this space to achieve something magical and see something magical in somebody else as well. And they as well as maybe mirror, but they also amplify. Horses can amplify the feelings and stuff like that, and they do that so beautifully. And we've got other examples of there's another guest, two girls who were mute, and it's when they would speak to their mother but to nobody else, nobody at school, nothing. And at the end of they stayed for 2 weeks, and at the end of the second week they were chatting to everybody. in the
Wow.
stables. They're chatting to all the horses. They started off talking to the horses, and it's just magic, isn't it? Like these horses are good at this stuff.
And would you say that upon arrival, do you have to be open to that kind of magic happening? Or do you also see your sort of cynical customer? Do you see their eyes opening to the experience? Or do you have to go with an open heart, ready for the magic to happen?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question because because having been involved in the equestrian industry, there's a lot of strong opinions and yeah, some amazing people and I guess some people that are not necessarily open, to different approaches sometimes, but I guess we struggle with that a little bit at first because people had that expectation to come in, and it might be a strong mum, that wants their little Johnny to be able to canter by the end of the week or whatever. And we sort of observed this for the first few years, and then we realized, okay, yeah, we need to press stop because we can't expect our team to sort of push back, and say, no, that's not what we're going to do today. Because sometimes, the mum would, feel like they're more experienced than one of our, one of our tutors. So that closing was really good because it meant that we could rebrand and reposition how we describe ourselves and what we offer. And we did lose customers at that point because it just wasn't for them, which, fair enough. I totally respect that. So now what I'm finding is that we are getting people that are coming in open to, seeing some sort of personal development for themselves effectively, Now, the children have been really interesting because I think with the Mary Wanless approach, which my sister's a coach for Mary Wanless, and she's been helping us with some of the techniques with the team. And much of that is, like we were chatting about earlier, is in-hand work. And we're finding that the children actually prefer the in-hand work to the ridden. Which becomes fascinating. So before even if they're kind of, lessons 2, 3, 4, they start by doing, firstly, having some sort of connection with the horse, whether that's grooming or, leading them in from the field. And then they'll do in-hand work first before they get on board. And that they've loved it because they're working eye to eye with the horse. And and that's when the real connection comes, and they understand it now because we're describing to them that we all have slightly different accents, and the horse needs to understand your voice and your accent and how you're going to communicate with them, because when you're on board they can't see you. So so this is kind of how we describe things. And I think as long as people understand our approach before they come through the door, then it's all good. They know what they're expecting.
Children have said they feel more confident when they actually get on the horse as well, because I think a lot of the time they're on the horse and quite full of fear.
Yes.
So the horse is sort of wondering what's going on as well, because they're they don't know if they can see what the person on top of them is frightened of.
Yes.
So I think we've had a lot of feedback from children saying that it's really improved their confidence about being around horses. And we've had a couple of people contact us recently, just for that, to say their daughter's doing really well at riding, but she's not very confident on the ground.
And I think we all feel that, don't we? Even as adults, when I do a successful sort of groundwork session, it's all gone really well and the horse is happy and I'm happy. You do feel a sense of empowerment because you think, wow, I can communicate with such a huge animal in front of me, an animal that could easily decide he or she doesn't want to take part in this. They could do their own thing. They could bolt off. They could simply say no. And yet they choose to work alongside us. And that is so empowering and so confidence boosting. And I still find that to this day, as an adult after a lifetime with horses, and as a child who started out obsessed with the riding. And I think it's really interesting that you say there's a move now for, children who actually prefer to be on the ground. And I wonder what impact do you think that will have when they then become adult equestrians? Do you think you're helping to almost breed a new species of equestrian that might have a different outlook on horses and riding to those who have just gone straight in on riding and on achievements and what they're doing at what level?
I think it's an interesting point. I mean, I suppose my personal ambition for what we're doing is for people to feel the connection, because you know, I came up through the competitive world, and I had some amazing times, you know, which I'm very grateful for, and you know, not too many broken bones, so that's quite good, and you know, but it's but you know, in competition, you have to have that connection. So I'm not saying that, you know, that the connection's not there. I think what I'm keen to do, though, is for people that are, uh, you know, sometimes fearful of horses, or you know, it's their first experience, or they might have lost a bit of confidence because of an event with a horse. Um, for me, it's about making sure that that we can help those people. You know, we can help them feel that connection. And you know, I worked with a lady last year who was very experienced with horses, probably more experienced than me, and she had a mare with a new foal, and she was getting really anxious about this move. She had to move the mare and the foal to a new livery yard, and it had to happen on this day. And you know, she'd hired a box and whatever. And one of the things we work with in the equine facilitated work is the balance of goal versus relationship with a horse. Okay, so, and the challenge working with horses is, how important is that goal to you and the horse versus the relationship with the horse? And so it's this balancing act, and it's really important that you can't achieve your goal unless you've got that relationship, and the relationship can come and go, the connection can come and go. So we work together, and we establish together, you know, does it need to happen on that day? What if it didn't happen on that day? What, you know, would it be so bad? And once she was able to move past the pressure that she was creating associated with the horse and the foal moving on that day, of course it went beautifully well on that day. And I think sometimes we just got to slow it down a bit. And we've got to just sometimes, just enjoy, give yourself time just to be with your horse, not necessarily with a goal in mind. And I think that's that's where some of the real magic is, I think.
And that pressure that you mentioned has been ingrained in us, hasn't it? As equestrians, whether you start as a child or whether it comes to you as an adult, our life with horses is all about pressures that we put on ourselves, but also that we hear, you know, at the side of the school, or we have people that walk past our horse field and they'll sort of yell out, you know, why aren't you riding that horse? And they're sort of perplexed at the fact that we do in-hand hacking and we do a lot of groundwork, and actually riding isn't a priority for the rescue horses. But there's always that sense of judgment and pressure, and it's so hard to let go, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it exists in all parts of our world, doesn't it? You know, whatever you're into. And I guess you know, I think that it is down to you know, I remember I went to see a horse behaviorist, and his view was always my horse, my way, you know. And I think that's right. I think in the end, you know, nobody is intentionally wanting to bring harm to their horse, or you know, we're all trying to do our best with horses. And for me, it's about intention. You know, if your intention is I'm trying to do my best, I, you know, think this is the right thing, then that's all good. You know, there's a lot of strong views out there, but in the end, I believe that horses pick up on our intention, and you know, they're very hardy animals, and if we've got good intentions, then that's all that matters, really.
And talk to us about being a grass farmer. You mentioned it at the beginning of the episode that a large part of what you do is the management of the land to keep the horses as naturally as possible. How difficult is that with the wet weather, and how do you achieve that balance of keeping the grass growing, the horses fed, and ultimately not poaching or overgrazing the land?
You know, if you could find someone who's cracked that,
Yeah,
I mean, equiculture is pretty good, isn't it?
yeah.
Equicentral, and there's many other systems out there. Um, I, you know, it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's down to resources sometimes. It's down to what do you have to work with? What do you inherit? What do you, how much money have you got? Yeah. But I think, you know, I guess the goal for us is that every day we try and get our horses closer to a more natural way of living. And the way that we're managing our pastures, and don't get me wrong, we're not where we want to be yet. It takes time. And we're focusing on surface areas with shelter, and from which pastures will connect. So it's similar to the sort of equicentral model. And that's really our plan. But we are going to also this year introduce a track as well, because for some of the more laminitic, horses, I think that a track will help that. But again, yeah, you just got to try things out, haven't you? And do the best you can. We do need to, if it's wet, it's not great. The horses are out there, so we're trying to just get them off that wet. But ultimately, movement is the most important thing for horses. So sometimes you've got to work with what you've got, haven't you? And just sort of do
Keep
the best you
evolving.
can with what you have. Yeah.
Yeah. Just working with the
Yeah.
extreme weathers that we now seem to get as well, don't we? Just extreme seasons that, are beyond anything we seem to used to experience, the incredibly wet winters and then the real hot 40-degree summers that we've had. And everything just seems amplified at the moment, doesn't it? So it seems to make horse ownership harder year on year, thinking, what season have we got approaching and what do we expect? Always a challenge for us. And before we wrap up, Tam, I want to come back to something you mentioned at the beginning of the episode. That was that sadness that you felt when you saw the horses that you'd inherited and the journey that they needed to go on to become healthy and happy mentally and physically. How does it feel now, having seen that transformation, having created your retreat and your haven for these animals? How do you feel now? What's it been like witnessing that journey?
We're in such a much better place than we were. We're not. It's like Anthony said, we're not at the end of the journey yet. There's still so much work to do, but to actually meet the horses where they are, they're so much happier and they're so much more playful and interested, and I think that's a really good sign, because before they were overworked and shut down, and that's not a great place to be. So I think it's wonderful because we can keep exploring what can make their lives better, and actually it really does mirror what makes our lives better. So more play, learning to relax properly, spending time with friends, good friends, non-judgmental friends,
Yes.
and eating well, it's all good. That's what works for them, and that's what works for us.
And Ants, what have you got from the experience starting, in a very competitive environment? How does it compare for you now in the equine facilitated learning industry and going down a slightly different route with horses? What have you gained from this new life?
I think that I've learnt a lot more about horses than I always, most people that have horses and they've been involved in horses, they kind of know that there's something special. They kind of feel it, and they know that it supports them. They know that it's something that they wouldn't want to be without, but they can't quite describe what it is, and what I found with the equine facilitated work is that I can describe what it is now. So I know the science, and I know, what is going on for a human and the horse. So I would say I've learned a lot more about horses, and just their psychology, their behavior, the way they communicate. And I've realized that most people that work with the horses are able to learn about themselves, and that's really the work that we're doing, and that's what we're seeing with people that come to spend time with us.
And finally, what is next for you both and your retreat? What's on the horizon?
Gosh, we launched Horse Connection last year. We have an overarching brand, which is My Connection. The M is these are Norse runes, actually. So we're giving a bit of a nod to old wisdom, because of the 50 odd million years the horse has evolved for. And so anyway, so My Connection, we're looking to help people resource themselves, really. So this year we're doing our first corporate retreats.
Ooh.
And we're going to be working with business leaders to help them with emotional resilience, and support them with the sort of pressures they're under, through working with the horses. And so that's that. And then Easter and summer is very much families, and they've a lot of families have already booked up and looking to have Horse Connection experiences. So we're looking forward to that, and it gives them a chance just to really connect with each other and enjoy working with horses.
Oh. And what would you say to both of you? What have you learnt most from this experience that you've embarked on since the pandemic, which was a trialing time for us all, but leaving behind your safe corporate lives and taking on a huge new journey that was a big challenge to tackle? What have you both learnt from the whole process, would you say?
For me, I suppose that I can't do as much as I think in 1 year, but looking back over 3 years, we've done quite well. So I'm pleased with that. And also that we're really blessed, apart from to have this opportunity. We're totally lucky to have that. But also the sort of people we meet in our world now are really wonderful people who want to help other people, because that's what we want to do. We want to support people where they are, because it is a really difficult time. One of the retreats it's focused on Gen Z or Gen Z, whatever you say, I don't know. And they're going through a tough time, so we're really lucky that we can help them with their communication skills, understanding stuff, not having anxiety about what's happening next week, or depression about what happened last week. Sort of, we're in a really good place to help them, and I just feel really lucky that that's where we are, and that's I think what I've learned, how lucky I am to be with horses. What about you?
I mean, the big change, I guess, was that home became work. And which is a really interesting one, because we don't have sort of a differential between weekends and weekdays now. It's kind of all one. So we learned the hard way that we need to set quite clear boundaries around that, for us to have our own time and space as well, and time out and things. So we've got lots of energy at the moment, which is great. However, we have to sort of keep that in check. But I mean, it is as Tam said, it's a real blessing to be just working with horses and just seeing the impact they can have on people's lives. It's that's pretty lucky.
I was going to say, we're very lucky that we've met somebody like you doing something, spreading the word about how we look after horses better, what we do differently. Like, let's not just go with the herd. Let's kind of think about it. And I think that's the real important thing. We're always interested in hearing about people that are doing great new stuff.
Oh, thank you so much. And funnily enough, I was going to say it's incredible, your work, because you're bringing people closer to horses and connecting with horses, but you're also creating a community of, as you describe, wonderful people who are non-judgmental, which can sometimes feel quite challenging to find, particularly in the equestrian industry, when there is a lot of judgment from people. So I think it's amazing, that community that you're building, and we're so thankful that you've come on Curious Equestrian to share your journey with our audience, because I think you're going to inspire so many people listening.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you
real pleasure.
so much.
And, come and find us.
And how can they do that? If someone wants to come and find you, stay for a retreat or some horse connection workshops?
Yeah, so, just go to our website. So it's collacott.co.uk, and that's COLLACOTT. And you'll find us there. And you can book online, or just give us a call. Happy to have a chat with you.
Thank you so much for listening to and watching Curious Equestrian. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube so that you don't miss an episode and all that's coming your way, or you can subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you listen. If you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that would really help us to find lots more lovely listeners. And you can also follow us on Instagram @Curious Equestrian Podcast. We'll see you next time.